The city gates slam shut. Beyond the walls, flames devour the farmlands. No traders are entering. No food shipments are coming through, and there's no rescue army marching to your aid. Yet inside these walls, people still carry coins that clink in their pockets. Agreements are still written on paper, and technically the law still stands. But here's the brutal truth: none of that means anything now. Because when you're trapped in a siege, money isn't the first thing you lose, it's trust. Welcome to a place where wealth, authority, and the past crash together, and everything is far more complex than it appears. Think about ancient battles for a second. What comes to mind? Probably soldiers charging at each other, weapons clashing, walls crumbling, and epic attacks, right? That picture feels reassuring because it tells us wars are won through raw power, courage, or brilliant battle plans fought in the open. But here's what history actually shows us: most ancient conflicts weren't decided that way at all. They were won gradually, silently, and through economic strangulation during sieges. A siege wasn't some plan to overpower an enemy's forces. It was a calculated move to dismantle an entire system, to sever every supply route, to freeze all commerce, and to transform time itself into the ultimate weapon. The objective was never to demolish the city from outside its walls. It was to watch the city tear itself apart from the inside. Ancient cities weren't just places where people lived. They were powerful economic machines. They brought together workers, accumulated wealth, stored food supplies, concentrated political power, and established authority. Whoever controlled the city controlled everything around it. Launching a direct attack? That was dangerous and costly. Starving them out? That was affordable. An attacking army didn't need to win some glorious battle. They just needed patience. And that patience paid off because cities couldn't survive without constant supplies of food, fuel, and most critically, trust. The moment those lifelines got cut off, the economy trapped behind those walls started behaving in ways that seemed strange, senseless, even heartless, but they were completely predictable. The first shift wasn't about money. Coins didn't just disappear from one day to the next. Prices didn't instantly spiral into madness. What transformed was what people desperately needed. Under normal circumstances, money functions as a guarantee. It symbolizes your ability to get things later. During a siege, later becomes meaningless. Guarantees lose all credibility. And suddenly food isn't just another product, it becomes the actual currency. Wheat takes the place of silver. Bread becomes your payment, food rations replace your salary. Whoever controls the food supply controls everything. This is the birth of the siege economy. The authorities have no choice but to take over distribution. If they let the free market run wild under extreme shortage, prices shoot through the roof. Poor people die first. Chaos erupts immediately, so the government intervenes. They implement rationing plans, they announce frozen prices, they subsidize bread or just confiscate it entirely. On the surface, this appears to restore order. In reality, it spawns something far more deadly: a massive divide between what the rules say and what's actually happening. Fixing prices doesn't make scarcity vanish. It just reorganizes who suffers. Merchants don't suddenly ignore basic incentives just because a law demands it. If selling grain legally at the government's price guarantees their destruction, they won't sell it openly. They conceal it. They water it down. They play the waiting game. Smuggling becomes more lucrative than following the law. Hoarding becomes the smart choice. Underground markets spring up not because people lack morals, but because staying alive rewards those who break the rules. The siege economy doesn't kill markets, it forces them into hiding. Meanwhile, trust crumbles. People stop believing their money will protect them. They stop believing laws can save them. They stop believing tomorrow will resemble today in any way. And when trust dies, every single transaction becomes a political statement. Every piece of bread represents a choice about who gets to survive another day. Every ration becomes a display of who holds power. Distributing food stops being simple logistics, it becomes the foundation of legitimacy. Who gets to eat reveals who truly matters. This is the moment when inequality stops being some abstract concept and becomes deadly. When times are good, abundance can mask inequality. During a siege, there's nowhere to hide it. The wealthy enter a siege with advantages that multiply instantly. They have grain reserves, private connections, political influence. They can make deals, they can afford to wait. The poor have no such luxury. Most city residents depended on daily markets just to survive. When those markets fail, there's zero cushion. Soldiers get paid in food, officials eat before anyone else. Everyone else is told to stay calm and wait. A siege doesn't create inequality from scratch. It just strips away the illusion that it wasn't already baked into the system. As days stretch into weeks, money keeps changing hands. But it purchases less and less with each transaction. Coins don't vanish entirely. They just become pointless. Trading goods directly takes over. A bag of grain becomes more valuable than a box of silver. People trade their jewelry for bread. Furniture gets burned as firewood. The economy doesn't fall apart randomly. It becomes more basic. Value returns to pure usefulness. Whatever keeps you breathing today is worth absolutely everything. Whatever might benefit you someday is worth absolutely nothing. This is when most cities cross a line they cut and come back from, and they often do and even realize it as happening. Laws are still written down, but nobody enforces them anymore. Contracts still exist on paper, but they don't produce results. The government still claims it's in charge, but its actual power shrinks with every empty stomach. The siege economy reveals an uncomfortable reality. Systems don't fail all at once in some dramatic moment. They fail in stages. Trust collapses first, markets fail next, then legitimacy crumbles. And only at the very last moment does order break down completely. From outside the walls, a siege looks motionless. The walls stand firm. The armies sit and wait. But inside, everything is being transformed. Motivations become sharper. Allegiances begin shifting. Survival becomes the only principle that organizes society. The attacking army doesn't need to break through those gates, because the economy inside the city is already destroying itself on their behalf. By the time the city realizes that money is powerless to save them, the siege has already accomplished its mission. The illusion finally shatters when the city understands that holding out isn't about bravery anymore. It's about simple math. How much food is left? How many people need feeding? How long before starvation rewrites everyone's loyalty? This is the turning point when sieges stop being military standoffs and become economic death sentences. History documents this shift with harsh consistency. Because once a siege economy fully matures, the ending is almost never in doubt. Athens discovered this truth during the Peloponnesian War. Protected behind its extensive walls, the city believed its naval access and silver stockpiles would keep it safe. And for a while, that belief held up. Money continued flowing. People got their wages. The system appeared functional. But then plague, overcrowding, and supply problems revealed the fragility underneath. Grain shortages triggered widespread panic. Trust evaporated faster than any wall could crumble. The city didn't collapse because its treasury went broke. It collapsed because its economic beliefs did. The siege transformed their strength into their weakness, and the ancient world's most advanced democracy learned that supply lines matter more than ideals. Rome learned this same lesson repeatedly. During sieges throughout the late Republican Empire, food became the deciding factor. Currency remained plentiful. Authority looked solid on paper. But once supply routes were blocked, city populations shifted from assets to problems. Government grain distributions, once tools for maintaining stability, became countdown timers. When bread deliveries stopped, loyalty disappeared overnight. Riots erupted. Emperors gained and lost power not on battlefields, but in the streets where hungry people gathered. Rome didn't just conquer through military might. It ruled through food supplies. And when food failed, authority collapsed with it. No city demonstrates the siege economy more perfectly than Constantinople. For hundreds of years, its walls kept invaders out. Not because they couldn't be beaten, but because the city became masters of endurance. Their true defense wasn't made of stone, it was the sea. Grain, commerce, and supplies poured through the Bosporus, buying precious time even when enemies surrounded the gates. But in 1453, that lifeline was severed. Mehmed II's Ottoman forces blocked all maritime access, choking the city's economy before the actual siege even started. Behind the walls, food rations grew tighter. Prices exploded. People started trading goods instead of using money. Starvation became a weapon. Constantinople held out for almost 2 months longer than most cities possibly could under those conditions. But endurance always has a breaking point. When the city finally fell, it wasn't because they'd run out of money in their vaults. It was because time and supplies had reached zero. This pattern keeps recurring because starvation isn't some unfortunate side effect of siege warfare. It's the entire strategy. Hunger destroys coordination. It forces people to think only about the immediate present. It creates impossible decisions. When people are starving, they don't consider ideology or long-term loyalty. They think about their next meal. Siege economies weaponize this fundamental reality. They turn survival into a bargaining chip. Surrender becomes a logical economic calculation, not a failure of character. Power doesn't need to destroy a city if it can simply wait for the city's economy to dismantle itself. What makes siege economies so revealing is how rapidly money loses its symbolic power. Currency is a social contract, a collective belief that tomorrow will function similarly to today. Sieges obliterate that belief. When tomorrow becomes uncertain, anything promising future value collapses. Inflation accelerates, not because prices climb, but because confidence dies. Value gets compressed entirely into the present moment. Food, fuel, shelter, protection, these become everything. Everything else turns into background noise. This is why sieges feel disturbingly relevant to our modern world. Remove the ancient walls and the armies, and the fundamental mechanics stay identical. Cut off supply chains. Limit people's movement, create scarcity. Watch how quickly normal economic behavior falls apart. Wartime blockades, economic sanctions, sudden disruptions to trade, and even natural catastrophes all trigger this exact same sequence. Not because history literally repeats itself, but because human incentives remain constant. They restrict what can be imported, insured, shipped, or purchased. The currency might still exist. Banks might keep operating. Prices might still get posted. But the underlying flow that gives those symbols any real meaning starts fracturing. Goods arrive delayed or never arrive at all. Substitutes emerge. Quality deteriorates. Costs climb. Inflation spikes not because people suddenly turn greedy, but because scarcity concentrates value among fewer hands. The identical thing happens when supply chains break down. Factories shut their doors, ports grind to a halt. Transportation slows to a crawl. The system doesn't fail uniformly. It splits along pre-existing weak points. Those with stockpiles, storage facilities, or political leverage can wait it out. Those without resources pay the price immediately. Hoarding resurfaces not as a moral breakdown, but as a rational response to uncertainty. Underground markets thrive because price controls and restrictions don't eliminate what people need. They just hide it from view. Cities devastated by natural disasters demonstrate this pattern with harsh clarity. Roads become impassable. Electricity fails, fuel supplies run dangerously low. Official prices still technically exist, but availability doesn't match them. Direct trading replaces money, trust becomes localized. Information becomes more valuable than currency. People stop asking what something should cost. They ask whether it even exists. The economy doesn't disappear into nothing. It condenses. This is where inflation, panic buying, and the breakdown of trust all converge. Inflation isn't merely rising prices. It signals that confidence in future access is weakening. Panic buying is an irrational behavior. It's people voting against the system's ability to deliver tomorrow. And black markets aren't evidence of chaos. They prove that markets adapt faster than regulations, remove imports, restrict movement, disrupt logistics. And you don't need violence to destabilize an economy. You only need time to pass. Because once trust and access erode, money stops coordinating how people behave. And when money stops coordinating behavior, power reasserts itself through controlling the supply chain. There's a reason panic buying looks identical across different centuries. When trust weakens, people don't stockpile currency. They stockpile certainty. Grain or fuel supplies. Bread or backup generators. The specific items change with time, but the psychology stays constant. Nothing reveals how much people believe in a system quite like watching their behavior the moment they no longer sure it'll function tomorrow. And this brings us to the final, uncomfortable lesson siege economies teach us. They reveal what systems are actually designed to protect. In every siege throughout history, the pattern is crystal clear. Authority chooses stability over fairness every time. Distribution prioritizes control over equality. Loss gets managed, never eliminated. Someone always absorbs the damage. Siege economies don't invent cruelty from nothing. They expose how resources actually get allocated. This isn't ancient history warning us about societal collapse. It's ancient history explaining how systems are designed. Economies are fragile because they depend on assumptions, continuous trade flows, enforceable trust between parties, a predictable tomorrow. When those assumptions shatter, what's left behind isn't chaos. It's hierarchy revealing itself. Power becomes concentrated. Value becomes simplified. Rules get bent. And the system shows its true priorities. Sieges teach us that money was never the foundation of survival. It's just the interface we use. Food, energy, and trust, these are the real reserves underneath. When those disappear, no amount of silver, gold, or paper currency can hold an economy together. Cities didn't fall because people lost faith in some abstract sense. They fell because the mathematics stopped working. History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but pressure always comes back. And pressure always exposes the true structure beneath. If this shifted how you see the world, hit that subscribe button. History holds all the answers. I'll show you exactly where to find them.